There's too many of you crying. Brother, 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 there's far too many of you dying.
Welcome to another edition of What's Hot. I'm Howard Eagle, your host. As always, we'd like to thank the community for tuning in and remind you that you can catch us right here at RCTV, Channel 15, every Wednesday at 6 o'clock p.m. and every Saturday at 6 o'clock p.m. If you'd like to contact us regarding the possibility of coming on the show to give us feedback or for any other reason, please feel free to give us a call at 752-1426. We'd like to acknowledge and thank the men behind the camera week after week, our co-producer, Mr. Dana Bratcher, our technical supporters, Mr. Rajesh Barnabas, Mr. Ben Dean Kawamura, and Mr. Nate Castillo. We'd like to thank them for their technical support. Joining me is our co-host, Mr. Wallace Smith, and our very special guest this week is Mr. David Vara, many of whom in the community know as Davy V. And we're going to talk about his ongoing work in terms of, I think it's fair to say that as it relates to the work of the Rochester Police Department, you're one of the most consistent watchdogs, for lack of a better word, of their work. And we know that a few years back you produced a couple of shows, a couple of DVDs documenting police brutality specifically within the Rochester Police Department. The community hasn't heard a lot specifically about your work since that time, and so we want to talk about what you've been doing since then.
Absolutely, Howard. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, those that recognize me or know a little bit about my history, a lot of it started back in the 80s and early 90s. My dad, Mario Vara, was longtime critic and very outspoken activist against police brutality, specifically the Rochester Police Department. And all the way back from Calvin Green, which people remember, all the way back from Alicia McCullough, who was murdered in cold blood by an RPD cop. And obviously all the way through the scandal with the hit squad members in the 90s and Gordon Urlacher and whatnot. Unfortunately for my father's involvement in activism in the community against police brutality and misconduct, he was singled out by RPD and by some very specific members of the RPD, and literally they made his life hell.
Okay.
His life became impossible. He would be constantly harassed, constantly persecuted by the police for his activism. And unfortunately, in '93, he fell into a very bad depression and spiraled downward very quickly. And he committed suicide in 1993 in our home while me and my mom was there. I only tell a little bit about that because it's something that's hard to talk about, but it's something that over the years, now as a father myself, something that one day soon I'll have to kind of explain to my children, and that's very tough, but also the personal relationship that I had with my dad and, you know, how I miss him every day and how he wasn't just my father, but he was, you know, my best friend.
Yes, sir.
And I grew up, you know, tagging along, for lack of a better word, to a lot of his meetings and rallies with a lot of, you know, the local reverends, Reverend Graves, and even Al Sharpton in the early 90s, which many viewers probably remember. He came down here for several rallies and several meetings. So basically, just to give you a little bit of background, and I get asked one question a lot. I get asked, why? I mean, it's funny, just a little while ago, you know, I was approached and by somebody who knows my work and said, why? Why, what is it with you and the police?
Okay.
And it's simple that as a young boy, I grew up reading and having Officer Friendly visit me at school.
Okay.
And, you know, to go from being a 9, 10, 11-year-old to actually being brought up, you know, in a society where you're asked and expected to respect the police, and that quickly diminished. That quickly went downhill when I saw, you know, how nasty and racist and corrupt they can be, and how much they can abuse their power.
If I'm not mistaken, I think I remember. Did your father have a lawsuit against the Rochester Police Department? And how did that turn out?
I've had the family has had several incidents with the police, and again, the nucleus, which I always go back to, which goes into the explanation of why. That's the question I get asked the most. I get interviewed a lot, whether it's, you know, whether it has been media, especially a lot of print magazines throughout the country have done a lot of interviews, and I always get that question. It never escapes. My dad had a lawsuit in '86. RPD cops broke the door down without a warrant. And unfortunately, that lawsuit, because of a very vicious and nasty city attorney back then, basically that lawsuit, my family didn't win.
Okay.
After that, and especially after I was beaten in '89 and confused for somebody who allegedly was driving a stolen car. When the bad thing is that the beatdown that they imposed on me came before they realized that they had the wrong person, and they left me basically on Ackerman Street in the city behind Goodman Plaza. So my dad suffered a lot with that case, and that case did reach a settlement. Unfortunately, it reached a settlement a year after my dad died, so he never got to see that. And then through the mid '90s, me as a filmmaker and a video producer, I caught Officer David Joseph basically abusing an African-American motorist on Child and Maple Street. That video, subsequently to that, our news got their hands on it, and they started playing it like they do every half hour on the hour. Shortly after that, I had the displeasure, I should say, of meeting an RPD cop named Nick Joseph, who right now that name is synonymous with basically a corrupt, dirty, cokehead, drunk cop that has basically single-handedly brought down a whole department out in Greece.
Okay.
And he came into my home, he assaulted me, he beat me in my home, he falsely arrested me. And then, and only then, I find out that this cop, RPD cop, was the brother of David Joseph, basically sticking up and taking out some punishment on me as a retaliation for me catching his brother months earlier abusing an African-American motorist. So as you can see, they've steadily and continuously through the years, not only with my dad, and it didn't stop at his death, it's continued where it's basically me standing up for what I feel is right, me exposing injustices that are committed on a daily, and I want to emphasize daily. Chief Moore can come on and say whatever he wants to say.
Well, let me stop you right there, because I want, and don't lose that thought. I want the audience to know this is not about bashing the Rochester Police Department. It is about listening to you tell the truth that you know and that you've lived and experienced. But we offer Chief Moore and anyone else from the Rochester Police Department who wants to come on the show an open invitation so that they can come and give their version if they like. So that's an open invitation to Chief Moore. So
absolutely, and I won't lose the last train I was on, but basically daily it happens. The sad thing is, and it's one of my biggest things, which I refuse as a native of Rochester, born in this city, and as somebody who's been affected and impacted so much by corrupt police and rogue cops in the Rochester Police Department, I refuse to just let people forget. So it's funny because when you stopped me earlier, I'm glad you did, because as far as an invitation, let me explain something to you about the police that the RPD, they don't want the average citizen to know. But here's what's going on with the police. Me, okay, and I don't like to give myself a title. I've been titled activist, filmmaker, community journalist. So for what it be, I'm a man first and foremost. I'm a father. I'm a son of a very good man that basically fell into a very bad depression and it ended in his life because he suffered so much against this racist and corrupt police department. But my thing is, about 2 months ago, I own a production business in the city, a film company, Keep It on the Real Productions. And basically, as I was leaving my business that I rent, that I pay for every month and conduct my business there, I was approached by an RPD cop who's a young cop, a rookie cop. He blocked me in as I was leaving the driveway. This cop puts a spotlight on me for approximately 5 minutes before he even exits his car. I'm being blinded. He comes to the passenger side. He unfastens his gun holster, and he's got his hand on his gun. He's visibly you can tell that he's new. Not only does he look like a very young officer, but you can tell that he's very tense and very twitchy. I got my hands up as high as I can put them because I know that you better show them that you have nothing in your hands. I want to give them no excuse, especially with my work that I've done as a filmmaker. And basically, he asked me in a very stern, very rude manner, where are you coming from? What are you doing here? I explained to him that I own a business. I even offered at one point, when he gave me that look like he didn't believe me, I offered to walk him into my business. I said, the name of my business is on the marquee right outside the building. I can walk you in. I can show you. I was just leaving. So he's basically no explanation. And in a very stern and hostile manner, he basically told me, get out of here. So I got out of there. When I got home, I called 911. And I asked to speak to the most highest ranking official of that night.
On duty.
On duty. A sergeant called me, and basically he told me this very kind of pre-cut, very kind of sounding prepared statement that almost that he had it ready. Basically said that they were looking for a man with a gun in that area. That a girl the next block over had been assaulted and robbed of her gold earrings. So me and the sergeant went back and forth a little bit, and basically I wasn't satisfied with his explanation. So a lieutenant called me the next morning. Okay, there wasn't one on duty that night or whatever. He called me the next morning, and he basically went into this thing where, I understand, Mr. Vara, you're concerned, but that was the case and this and that. And my thing at this point is, okay, I understand that they're responding to a call, but it's more the way that I was treated, the way that I was approached. And I asked them for one very important thing, and I want the viewers to be very conscious of this. I asked them for a record produced to me, okay? And what the police call a job card. A job card basically is when they go out on a job, everything is documented. From the time that 911 call comes in, everything is documented, and the disposition of that case, what they found at the scene, what they found it to be, if it's a suspicious person, whatever the case may be, how did it end? And he said he could not do that for me. I said, okay, well, we need to go another step higher then. Okay, he told me that the next day he assured me that a sergeant, a lieutenant with the Rochester Police Department named Laura Grandy would be calling me. That was 3 months ago. I'm still waiting for Ms. Grandy's call. Okay. I contacted Chief Moore, still waiting for his call. Okay. So Chief Moore can go on any TV, any one of these cameras, and put that famous smile that I think a lot of people associate with him now when he comes on. He can say whatever he wants. Okay. His department, there's a lot of corruption. There's a lot of racism. There's a lot of rogue cops. There's a lot of cops like Nick Joseph who haven't been caught yet, who are still doing dirt to blacks and Latinos in this community on a daily basis. He can say what he wants, but the community and the people in the streets know better.
Okay, let's hold that thought. Let's talk a little bit in a broader sense about this whole issue of the Rochester Police Department being a racist institution. You know that on this show we've taken a position repeatedly that since the U.S. is, in fact, a racist society based on the history of its development and so forth, we believe all the major institutions in this society reflect that racism, the fact that racism was embedded in the social, in the economic, in the political, in the dominant cultural system of the nation from day one. But there are those who would argue that we're being inflammatory and so forth, and that we are not accurate. What do you think?
But you know, police brutality has been an issue in Rochester since the 60s. As a matter of fact, it gave rise to one of the first riots we had here in Rochester, okay? And you know, from a perspective of fight, we have always advocated for a police review commission with subpoena powers. And that's the reason, okay? Because the police cannot police themselves. It's obvious. The answers that you've gotten from your inquiries about your situation, you know, the responses that your father may have gotten, you know, and from our own situations. Every man of color in Rochester has an experience based